Just like I said, it is my pleasure to be here to present to you and to speak on the Vetiver System and the Vetiver Education Empowerment Project model as green infrastructure development tools. First of all, this picture here, is the case where we really say a picture can speak 1,000 words. And as you can see here, the roots of vetiver grass grow up to 10 feet deep in the first 2 years, making this incredibly powerful bioengineering tool. There's also been a lot of academic studies done on it, which have shown that the roots are also 5 to 7 times the strength of most other grass species. And that's really more in line with the strength of tree roots. And so if you could picture that sort of root system beneath the ground, I think that is what can really give you an idea of, obviously, how this can really hold land, prevent landslides and that type of thing. So to the right of the illustration, you'll see, to the right of that picture there, you'll see that there's also an illustration showing the different uses of vetiver. The leaves, as we heard from Minister Beckles, can be used for handicrafts. Very importantly, to the right, you can see the list of the engineering functions, which we're going to speak a bit more about today. Importantly, that's for slope stabilization and erosion control, soil and water conservation, and the treatment of contaminated lands and waters. So I'd like to just start by showcasing this case. So this is a case where a client was actually facing a landslip affecting infrastructure. You can see a retaining wall upstream, septic tank systems down below. And the slippage that took place led to quotations for retaining walls on the order of about $300,000. I'm sure we're all familiar, the cost of retaining walls in Trinidad Tobago is not cheap. The Vetiver system correctly implemented here was able to provide overall stabilization for about $40,000 to $50,000. So you can see how that represents a significant cost savings on the order of about 80%. Additionally here, for those who are familiar with C3, Corinth San Fernando, this is a site where it's sapote clays. For those who are familiar with sapote clays in Trinidad, very unstable. And this facility was facing slippage. Again, the retaining wall cost to stabilize this whole facility was on the order of about $10 million. And that's because this facilitates stormwater drainage for the whole facility. And it was able to be successfully stabilized instead for about $700,000 or $800,000. And this is using about 35,000 vetiver plants. Now it's important to say vetiver can't work in every single case. Sometimes you do require gabion baskets, rock walls, and sort of retaining walls and so on. So in those cases, it can work as a combined measure, helping to reduce the cost by using shorter walls, less baskets, and that sort of thing. And I think very importantly, as we move into this next phase of Trinidad and Tobago's future, really, where we need to think a bit more economically smart as well with our changing landscape. This can really represent an opportunity for more economically smart infrastructural practices as well as green practices. In this slide here, you can just see a couple numbers. I wanted to begin by showing, and you're going to see a lot more about this in the presentation today, but these include 30 case study sites. There's going to be a manual which is produced that showcases some of these cases you just saw here, but 30 of those, really showcasing these before and after pictures and cost benefits for each case, which really and truly is what is part of making this case and showcasing what this can do. Along with those 30 sites, there's been over 150 sites across Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean working with other partners. As mentioned, we were very grateful to receive the Superheroes Award from the Inter-American Development Bank, and that project came from working with over 100 partners, really and truly, across Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. Importantly, amongst those as well is the Ministry of Planning and Development's Green Fund through the Mirror Green program, which has allowed us to take this to the national level, which is the first case actually of a country in the Western Hemisphere promoting and using the Vetiver system at the national level. So we think this is an incredible first for Trinidad and Tobago, and actually an opportunity that can allow for greater recognition around the region coming out of Trinidad and Tobago, with it being a green infrastructure and climate resilience tool. We've also managed to train about 1,000 people to date, as well as in the implementation of the Vetiver system, also in the production and so on of handicrafts. So just very quick introductions to IAMovement. These were done earlier, so I don't need to spend too much more time, but we are focused on climate mitigation and climate adaptation as two key areas of our work over the years, starting with the climate marches, the Rethinking Energy video series, which we were also very pleased to do with the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago in 2018. But today you will be seeing and hearing a lot more about the adaptation side of things, and specifically that is through the use of vetiver grass as this green infrastructure tool, amongst other things. So what is the Vetiver System? It's a cost-effective green infrastructure solution to tackle a wide range of soil and water-related challenges. So you can see here a link to a short video. We're not going to show the video today, but with all that you've learned, I'm sure persons might want to go away thinking, how can I learn more about this? How can I see more? So I'm just mentioning because this link is a place that we managed to try and put a lot of the knowledge into just 2 to 3 minutes. So by you having access to this, you'll be able to sort of review on your own and gain a great understanding afterwards. So we will be sharing sort of this material after. This diagram here really showcases the difference between vetiver grass and the vetiver system. So what makes the vetiver system unique is the correct implementation of vetiver grass. So you can see in this photo here, someone installing plants, and that really is the case of putting them down in hedgerow formations on contour, which is what really provides that soil and water conservation effect of slowing down runoff, building topsoil, and that sort of thing. So the vetiver system refers to the correct implementation of vetiver grass through a systematic approach to achieve these benefits. I'm just going to run through briefly what these are, but these include project planning and design, depending on the needs, land preparation, contour plotting and correct installation, maintenance during establishment and long-term upkeep of the hedgerows, intercropping for agricultural applications, and the integration of other vetiver uses for further socio-economic benefits, which becomes very important when you're sort of introducing it to communities through a very unique model, which we'll speak about briefly just now, called the Vetiver Education Empowerment Project. So this photo here, this is really a sort of a quick image to see how the vetiver works as a bioengineering tool. So this is a slope of typical construction grade. For all of those who are in infrastructure, and I think the Permanent Secretary would be very familiar with this type of thing, land slips is a serious problem affecting our roads. So this is a slip up to 3 meters deep. So we're very familiar with this, I'm sure, driving on the roads. And when you picture that same deep and fibrous root system going down and intercepting that slip lane, we can really appreciate from a geotechnical standpoint how this improves the overall stability of slopes and how you can get some of those cases we showed at the start where you can really see that type of cost savings taking place. In addition, this is a slope, picture our hillsides. We're all familiar with the challenge of flooding, which faces Trinidad and Tobago in a very important way. So if water runs off of hills, it picks up a lot of speed as it runs off. It erodes, it takes sediments with it. It fills up dams. It's also a big problem in the public utilities sector in terms of filling up causing sedimentation. And when you have a hedgerow properly established on contour, what this does is it actually effectively stops the water from running off and gives it a chance to go into the ground, promoting groundwater recharge. So I heard this mentioned today by both Minister of Planning and Permanent Secretary as a very, very important thing. It is what feeds our public water systems and also captures topsoil importantly. I'm just going to introduce briefly here the Vetiver Education Empowerment Project model, because this is a model which was used to really take this to communities across Trinidad and Tobago and now the Caribbean as well. So this is the first project which is implemented in Paramin, and it has the VEEP model. What makes it unique is a number of different steps. Working with community members is fundamental to it, identifying the key project partner in communities that will champion this with us. We have a lot of wonderful community members whose work you can see behind the room over there. At the end, I encourage everyone to go and take a look at the handicrafts booth to get a bit of a hands-on feel for some of these projects. But in this project, we installed 25,000 plants in Paramin, which was the first project we implemented. And the success of that has led to us now taking this across Trinidad and Tobago with the IDB, the Green Fund, and other partners, as well as up the Caribbean. So here you can see some photos coming out of that as well for the handicrafts. But I wanted to importantly just interject this presentation on the Vetiver system to really ask the question, what is green infrastructure? Because we chose the Vetiver system as a case study example because of its ease of comparison to other infrastructure, that ability to really look and say, this was the cost of a retaining wall, this is a grass solution which is providing the same thing. But what about other forms of infrastructure or green infrastructure we may think a little bit less about? So I just want to ask everyone for a moment about forests. I mean, we think of green infrastructure, we do tend to think of a tool that holes, roads, and that type of thing. But forest is something that captures rainwater, feeds into our drainage system, feeds into our public work systems. If that forest is not there, you know, what happens? I mean, I think we are all familiar with what has been taking place in Port of Spain with the significant rates of flooding and that sort of thing. And this is really driven by a lack of the ability of water to percolate into the ground, promoting groundwater recharge, filling back streams, and really getting into the public systems, the hard drainage systems, a lot faster. So this conference, a very important part of it as well, is to really highlight, you know, green infrastructure that's beyond Vetiver. So we're very happy that it's being used as a case study, but we really want to highlight the value of this for persons to appreciate and understand that when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about green infrastructure in particular. We're speaking about so much more than just Vetiver. We just thought it could be an excellent bridge in that conversation. Additionally, mangroves, the Permanent Secretary did speak about that as another key tool that the Coastal Protection Unit, I think, is beginning to undertake, which is excellent, and we look forward to seeing more of those types of projects. And this is a typical urban environment where you can see that it's really just serving as that place for water to percolate into the ground in an urban environment. So even that is a case of green infrastructure. But I just wanted to really sort of leave everyone with that opportunity to continue thinking about how this can fit into our day-to-day lives, wherever it is, in our own backyards, in our construction, in our large projects, but certainly at a commercial, private, and individual level as well. So just coming back to the Vetiver system, I'm just showcasing briefly here a couple technical things about it, and then you're going to see a lot of pictures and case studies, which I think is probably the most important thing persons here today might want to see as examples across Trinidad and Tobago. So once again, these are hedgerows on contour, and by intercepting the downward sort of flow of water, that is really what promotes that groundwater recharge aspect. You can also see here about a foot of sediment is being captured behind this hedgerow, and that is really what showcases our ability to actually reduce the sediments that are getting into drainage systems, into our public Ministry of Public Utility systems that are affecting our water and that sort of thing. It's also a powerful tool to treat leachate, to take up contaminants. And so Vetiver can take up nitrogen, phosphorus, but also a host of heavy metals, arsenic, cadmium, copper, chromium, etc., etc. And here I have some photos in Paramin. And this is one of the first places, again, that we did implement in farming agricultural applications. And you can see that hedgerow on the top left. You can see just downstream of the hedgerow, a landslip has taken place. And that landslip stopped at the hedgerow. And that really is showcasing how this could actually protect land, farmlands, from this advancement, which ultimately would make its way up to further farmland, but also people's houses, which was the case in some of these pictures here. It's also an incredible mulch. So in this photo, you can see plants, and we're familiar with this setting as well, with desiccated ground around the plants. Vetiver leaves spread can become a mulch to keep in moisture. And that is very, very important as it pertains to agriculture. And we're speaking also about sustainable agricultural transitions and organic practices. So I wove some of these things into the presentation just to highlight, and it did become clear that I didn't need to focus as much on the infrastructure cases because we had so much fantastic presentations before, but in really appreciating a lot of these other forms of green infrastructure, which could be a little more subtle, but are nonetheless very important when we speak about moving towards a more sustainable society. Once again, this is the case we saw before of a retaining wall as an alternative. Vetiver was used for about $50,000 instead of about $300,000. These are more cases in residential properties. This is a residential site here as well. This is a case of Tucker Energy in South Trinidad, where they were facing gabion rock basket solutions for about $450,000 to $500,000. And instead, they were able to benefit from this solution for just about $150,000. Queenam was mentioned also in an earlier presentation. And this is a photo here which showcases the before picture, where you can really see the coastal erosion that I think a lot of us are familiar with in Trinidad and certain parts of Trinidad. And when that is properly benched back and terraced, we can actually get a solution. But if not properly stabilized, that can quickly degenerate into a similar solution to a similar problem to what we had before. So here you can see Vetiver hedgerows now being implemented. as was also mentioned, they often will not work on their own. It can require being put down in conjunction with other solutions. So here you can see gabion rock baskets that are implemented with the vetiver hedgerows as an overall solution for this coastal problem. This is some erosion pictures of that same C3 site that you also in San Fernando. And here you can see what it looks like at the time of installation, where you need to manage water during that installation phase. But ultimately, this is what the rows look like when they're more properly laid out during installation. Again, those plants are very small, where they very quickly grow into full plants with that deep root system to stabilize the land. This was the site also that the PS mentioned, Drainage Division in Santa Cruz. This is going to be one of the site visits we're visiting tomorrow. So we very much look forward to everyone who has registered for that. But this was an excellent case because it was a mixture of the Vetiver System hedgerows with rock baskets. And the other side of this bank is actually a retaining wall. So this is an excellent comparison to really see how, this can be a more cost-effective approach. And PS, I'd like to just say we actually would very much look forward to looking at cost sort of comparisons more closely with the Drainage Division on this. But this was a case of the erosion approaching the police station, and the solution of using rock baskets, vetiver, and geotextile together, all together was actually able to do the same effect of a retaining wall. This is just more quick pictures. I'm again just scanning through to showcase cases. But here you can see the strength of the vetiver hedgerows. Someone is standing on the back of a hedgerow, and that kind of really showcases how this can actually slow down the runoff of water, capture sediments, and that sort of thing. It's really different from most other grasses. Importantly also, by planting it in that hedgerow formation, it stays in a hedgerow and doesn't spread, which is very important also when introducing a species. You don't want something that's going to become invasive and cause problems for, say, farmers and other persons that you're working with it. This is an old site at the Brian Lara Stadium, but I thought very important to showcase because vetiver was used in the past. So that image you see on the top right, those plants are very much alive. They just get brown in the dry season. But even though they are there, they were planted sporadically. So what happens is, even though they're holding the ground, you have the water weaving in and out as much as it would like and causing serious erosion. So the result is you have erosion of about 3 feet. When they sought to open back the Brian Lara Stadium, there were several feet of sediment there. And, that is really just a case of showcasing that we had some of the local knowledge about vetiver, but it is completely different to implement the vetiver system as compared with just vetiver plants. And that's sort of some of the things we've been seeking to support. This is just a quick picture of a colleague's project in Costa Rica. She will be giving a presentation a little later today, you'll get to see. But just showcasing how those hedgerows can work also as a landscaping function, also in coastal environments there. And importantly, I just wanted to mention as one of the last cases before I close, is the swim call landfill, where, as we are all familiar, the leachate situation is a challenge. We are making moves right now towards more improved landfill situations I'm aware of, but the leachate ponds there do represent a risk to the environment. And so vetiver grass in this case was actually implemented to stabilize the embankments of this leachate pond. It's not been yet done properly for the purpose of leachate treatment. This is something we very much look forward to experimenting a bit more with SwimCall as well as the University of the West Indies on. But nonetheless, it has been introduced and used there already. But here you can see the condition of that leachate, which is affecting downstream communities. And therefore, we very much hope that these and other methods can be implemented to try to improve that situation. Just mentioning briefly regional projects. So we have worked with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund and ICA as a technical partner to take this to several other Caribbean islands, Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, and Trinidad. And also in Grenada, working with another partner with a GEF Small Grants Program project. As you can see, the handicrafts and so on is taking place there as well. This case just shows the mitigation of sediments on reefs, but we therefore have a very significant presentation from a colleague in South Africa who's been doing mega projects. So these types of projects is where you will hear about 20 million plants installed, 200 families employed for the production of these plants. These are some of the different partners that have worked to make these projects in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean possible. And this is a typical site that we would have typically covered under the MIRI Green program, which is the national program we have currently going with the Green Fund, where this is in East Port of Spain, and you can see how vetiver grass is being used to stabilize and shore up the edges of houses and so on, which could typically face, slippage and so on. So this is a quick map of Trinidad and Tobago to see the different areas that are being touched by the Mirror Green program. And we continue to work with all partners involved, including ministries, drainage division, and so on, and look forward to the continuation of that. And in closing, I would like to just quick mention of these two things, which are unfortunately not ready as yet, but will be by the end of the year, which is a catalog of case studies. So some of the case studies you saw today coming out of our same Building on Vetiver project with the Inter-American Development Bank, we'll really have the opportunity to open a book and see before and after pictures of every single site, understand the cost benefits involved, see the social and economic benefits as well, and really see all those different cases, whether it's coastal, quarries, infrastructure, and so on. And then lastly, please look out for the We Climate app, which will be launched. It will have a lot of educational videos on the Vetiver system, but you will also be able to go there, geotag locations with land slippage, erosion, etc., which we can then respond to by showing up and assisting with installation, training of persons, really spreading this knowledge as we have been doing. And this will become a really nice interactive map that persons can sort of observe and see sort of these projects around Trinidad and Tobago. So with that, thank you very much for your time.